Hi everyone, it's Erin from the Provincial Farmhouse. Today I'm going to be giving a hat box a makeover using new Redesign molds. For my project today, I'm going to be working on this little pink hat box that I thrifted for just $1. I am going to be removing the ribbon that's on the sides there. I'm just going to cut off the ends and then pull that through. It just didn't go with the vision that I had for this piece. I'm then going to be using Paint Couture's 2-in-1 primer in white. I'm going to be laying down one coat, letting that dry for about an hour, and then coming in with a second coat. This is going to help my paint to stick well to the surface. It is a bit slick, and it's also going to block that pink from bleeding through my layers of paint. I gave my 2 coats of primer a couple of hours to dry, and then I took out Redesign's new Ornate Legacy mold. As you can see, there are 4 beautiful frame designs in this stunning new mold, and I'm going to be working with the larger oval piece. So I'm dusting that with cornstarch. This is going to help my clay release. You can also use resin. I'm going to roll up my clay, and then I'm going to start pressing it into the mold. So you see I'm sort of pressing it in, and then I'm pushing the excess clay out. If I take a little bit too much, I can just push more of it in, just like I'm about to do there. And I'm just going to continue to do this, push out the excess and just make sure it's filled the way that I want until I'm happy with it. And then I'm going to begin to flex the mold to help that clay release from the sides. Next, I flipped the mold over and rolled it back to release the casting. I'm using Sealy's Quick Set wood glue on the back of my clay, just making sure I've got a really good coating there. And then I'm going to position it on the side of my box there. This is going to be the front section. I'm just gently pressing that down. And then I took out Redesign's new Regal Flourish mold. I am going to be using the smaller sort of pendant style design from that one. I'm going to dust it with cornstarch just like I did with the first one, and then I'm going to start working my dust air dry clay into the design. Just like before, I'm going to push out that excess clay, then flex it, and then flip the mold over and roll it back. So I'm going to add some glue to the back. You can see I've already made another one. I actually ended up making 3 of the same castings. I'm going to cover up that little hole there where the ribbon used to go. I don't want to have a ribbon on my project anymore. Then I'm going to add another one of those little pendants. As you can see, I had a little bit of a breakage there, but that's okay. I can glue that back together. So they're going to cover the 2 holes either side, and then I've got one in the center on the back. I then took out Redesign's new Timeless Ties mold. Now this is filled with stunning little bows of all shapes and sizes, but there is also a really beautiful trim piece that I'm going to be using first. So I'm going to dust that with cornstarch. I'm then going to roll my clay into a sort of sausage shape, and then I'm going to start pushing that into the mold design. Now this is a very delicate mold design, so I did have to be a little bit more patient with this. I'm just making sure I filled all of those sections, and then just like before, I'm going to flip it over and roll it back. I did have a few little pieces break away, but that is fine. We're using clay, so it is very easy to just piece those bits and pieces back together. I then took one of those pieces and started adding my Sealy's Quick Set wood glue to the back. I'm then going to glue that to the side. I'm going to have this connecting with the Ornate frame mold that we already have glued in place, and then I'm going to have it draping and sort of sweeping along to the next design, almost like a garland. So I'm just going to be taking those little pieces and gluing them down until I'm happy with the shape. I also took some of the extra little pieces that had broken off, and I glued them here and there just to add some interest, so it wasn't just sort of like a single line. I wanted little bits coming off the sides, and as you can see, I've continued and done the exact same thing on the other side, creating a garland that stretches from the frame to the other pendant piece. And then I am going to add some more of the I'm not sure what you'd call it, maybe vinyl, we'll just call it a garland. I'm going to add the garland to the other side as well. So I'm just continuing it so that I have that draped pattern between each of the different pieces in this design. Once I finished organising the garlands, I took out Redesign's new Angelic Floral Noel mould. I am going to be using one of these beautiful little angels. I'm going to dust one of them with cornstarch. Again, this helps that clay to release, and then I'm going to start working my dust air dry clay in. So these do not just have to be used for Christmas. I think this is perfect if you like a French country look. You often see angels and sort of cherubs and a lot of that sort of decor. I'm just going to release that casting, and then I'm going to add my Sealy's Quickset wood glue to the back, and then I'm going to be positioning this little angel in the center of my frame. So I'm just being gentle not to damage any of the details, and I'm just going to position that the way that I want. I then cast another one of those beautiful ornate frames. I'm going to sit that there, but I'm actually going to break it apart because I want the design to cover the top, but sort of frame out the top. So I'm actually going to, as you can see, I've cut that apart. I'm then going to cast another one of the ornate frames there, and then I'm going to have that down the bottom and sort of join the two pieces together. So I just wanted a larger framed piece that I could have on the top, and using this mold was perfect. It was definitely a good solution. So I'm just going to keep cutting until I'm happy with how that's sitting on top. I then gently flipped them over, and I'm going to add that same Sealy's Quickset wood glue to the back so that I can glue these pieces in place. Next, to try and blend the two pieces together, I'm just using a wet wipe to sort of run over the edge. I'm also adding a tiny little bit of clay in between, again, just to try and blend those two sections together. It's not going to be perfect, but I don't need it to be perfect. I am going for a vintage look. I then took out the Timeless Ties mold again, and I'm going to be dusting one of the tiniest bows from that mold with cornstarch. I'm then going to work some dust air dry clay into that sweet little bow, and then I'm going to flex the mold and pull it out. I'm going to be also casting the beautiful sort of garland trim piece there, and I'm going to add some glue to the back of the bow first and position that on the lid. So we're moving on to decorating the outside section of the lid. I'm going to add some of that little garland there either side of the bow, so not the whole thing. I didn't measure how much I put either side, but I'm going to add a little bit of garland either side, and then I'm going to come in with another bow, and then I'm going to be repeating that pattern. So bow and then some garland until I have the entire outside covered with that lovely pattern. After a few hours, I came in with Paint Couture's Italian Ivory. I'm going to be going over the top of my castings. My castings do have a really good crust on them. Some of them have been drying for longer than others. I'm just going in and I'm using a dabbing and stippling motion to apply my Italian Ivory. I want it to have, as I said before, a bit more of a vintage look, and I really love the texture that doing that dabbing and stippling motion creates. So instead of getting brush strokes, I'm going to get that lovely texture, and I'm just going to continue to work my way around, repeating the same process. I'm going to do 2 coats of this on the base and obviously also the lid. Now this paint has a built-in sealer as well, so I am saving myself a step. I let my paint dry overnight, and the next day I came in with Redesign's Blush Symphony transfer. I really like the smaller rose designs there. I felt like that would go really nicely with the look I was going for. First, I'm going to cut off the excess roses that are down the bottom. We don't need those. I'll save those for later. And then I'm going to go in and I'm going to cut off the rosebud and also the larger rose, because those won't really fit and we don't want to sort of overcomplicate or overdo it on the top lid. I positioned the transfer in the center where I wanted it to go, and then I just used my fingernails to start creasing where I was going to need to cut off the bottom section. So just working out what's going to fit inside of that frame. And then once I have a clear crease, I'm going to use that as a guide to cut off that excess. But I am going to cut off a little bit extra just to make sure I haven't sort of miscalculated. I'm then going to peel the backing off the transfer and then position it in place. And just sort of gently working it down in there. There are a few different little levels there on the frame mold, and then I'm going to start rubbing and burnishing it. So I'm going to be picking up a piece of that plastic and lifting as I rub, and I'm just going to continue that process until I have the entire design transferred down. To seal my transfer, I'm going to be using Paint Couture's Extreme Guard in Satin. I'm going to be applying 2 coats of this over the top of the roses. When that was dry, I took out my Van Dyke Brown Antiquing Glaze, and I'm going to be going over the top of the entire outside of my project on the base and on the top. So I'm really working it into all of the details. I'm also using my water mister to help move that glaze. I'm using a pointed tip brush. I will link the one that I'm using in the description below. It is from Paint Couture's Capital Crafts collection. And once I have some of that glaze down, I'm going to use a wet wipe to start pulling some of it back. I can also use the wet wipe to spread that glaze a little bit as well, but really it's going to provide definition. It's going to sit down in those low points, and it's going to really highlight all of the beautiful details in these castings. And I'm just going to be repeating the same process, applying that glaze, occasionally using my mister to help it move. The Italian Ivory that we have down does have that built-in sealer, so I'm able to wipe back as much or as little as I want. If you used a paint without a sealer, I would suggest you put down a liquid top coat just to make sure that you have the freedom to wipe back as much of the glaze as you want. Next, it was time to move on to the lid. I began by adding it to the rose section and obviously the frame as well. I'm going to be wiping back a lot from the section that has the flowers. I don't want to have a huge buildup of the glaze there, but I am going to allow it to accentuate the beautiful frame details. And of course, I'm going to be adding it down the bottom, or rather the outside of the lid, just to highlight all of those beautiful castings. If this aged and worn look wasn't to your taste, obviously you could leave the glaze step out. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Vintage Moss Mineral Paint and a small artist brush. I'm going to be going over the top of the leaf details, starting with that beautiful angel. So I'm just going over the top of anywhere that I can see that there are leaves. There are also some really beautiful roses or flowers, so I'm going to be leaving those so that I can come in with another color later on. Next, I moved on to adding green to the garland. This design has a lot of beautiful leaves as well, and it's also got what looks to be rose buds as well, so I'm going to leave some of those, but mainly going over all of the leaf details with that vintage moss. If I inspire you to try any of the Redesign with Prima or Paint Couture products used in today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would use my affiliate link. You will find it in the description below. For the flowers, I decided to use Paint Couture's Vera at the Ballet mineral paint. I'm going in again with that small artist brush, going over the top of any of the florals that I can see. I am trying not to go down too low into the low points with the color. I still want to be able to see some of that glaze to give the castings that definition. Next, I moved on to the lid, and I'm going to be adding that same Vera at the Ballet to those sweet little bows. I decided not to add any green or pink to the garland details. I wanted to keep it pretty simple. I didn't want to overpower the lid, seeing as we have those beautiful florals sitting on top. When that was dry, I took out Paint Couture's Bronze Lux Metallic. I'm going to be going over the top of the top scroll details on the frame mold. I am again making sure that I don't obscure all of the glaze, as I do believe that that definitely provides that definition and also that age. I then moved on to adding the bronze to some of the details of the angel mold, just anywhere that I felt would look good. I am again just sort of being careful not to go over any of the other details. I also went to the lid and did the same thing as I did with the frame below. I'm just going over the top of the beautiful ornate sort of scroll work there, just going over the top of that, but leaving the rest of the frame as it is. Once I finished with the lid, I moved back to the base, and I'm just going to go over the top of the little bows that are above the pendant. Just like before, I'm not going for full coverage here. I still want to be able to see some of that Italian ivory and some of the glaze. I also then decided to go in and add a little bit more bronze to the angel's little tunic. When that was dry, I took out Couture's Simply White chalk paint. I'm going to get some of that on my brush, and then I'm going to offload it onto a paper towel. I'm going to be doing dry brushing over the top of the painted garland details. This is going to hit those high points. It's going to show us some more detail. It's also going to soften the look as well. I am going for sort of like a French country shabby chic look here. So this is going to soften it and just give it a little bit more of almost like a romantic feel. I'm going over the top of the angel a little bit as well, just lightening that up, nothing too drastic. And then I am going to be moving on to the lid as well. I'm just going over the top of the garland and bow detail that I have around the edge. It's just going to lighten it up a little bit, make it stand out a bit more, and then I'm also going to go over the top of the frame. I don't want to go too heavy. I don't want to completely obscure the bronze though. When that was dry, I came in with this little offcut from the classic vintage labels transfer by Redesign. I'm just going to add a little bit of text. This is something I do like to do. You could do this with stencils or stamps as well. I started off pretty well. The first part of the transfer came off well, but as I was rubbing, I guess I was probably being a little bit impatient. Some of it sort of curled up onto itself. And I kind of wrecked it a little bit. So after sealing, I decided I'd go in with a bit of sandpaper. I'm going to distress it up so it's not as obvious, and I'm also going to distress those roses a bit more because it ties in a bit better with that vintage look. So this is just going to show a few little white spots and give that vintage look. And here's a look at our finished hat box. I'm really pleased with how this turned out. I had so much fun using the beautiful new molds by Redesign. Let me know what you think of this in the comments. If you enjoyed today's video, I would really appreciate it if you would hit that like button, comment, and share it out. If you haven't already, I would love it if you would hit that subscribe button and the notification bell so that you don't miss out on any of our videos. You can find a full product list and my affiliate links in the description below. Thanks for watching.